What if everything you've been told about retirement savings is wrong? According to Fidelity, by age 40, you should have saved 3 times your annual salary. And by 50, that jumps to 6 times your income. If you're shocked, you're not alone. Over 57% of Americans worry they're falling behind on their retirement goals. Not because most aren't ready, but because figures like this can be deceiving. And that's exactly why I'm making this video today, to show you exactly where you stand, how to interpret these benchmarks, and how to reach your retirement goal to retire the right way. So let's get into it. So before we dive into the savings benchmarks, I want to introduce why you may be closer to retirement than you think, because of what I call the magic number monster, a trap fed by financial media and bad advice that's misleading 60% of pre-retirees. It's the tendency to judge our retirement readiness based on generic, age-based benchmarks, for creating unnecessary anxiety for some and false confidence for others, potentially derailing plans in both directions. And I'll show you exactly why. This monster thrives in financial media. You've probably seen its headlines: save 10 times your salary by 65, or you need $1 million to retire. It's so widespread that it's hard not to feel like you're getting graded against some universal scorecard. And that's where the problem starts. See, there's a psychological need that we all have to compare ourselves to others and find simple targets. It's human nature. We do it with our cars, our houses, and even vacation photos on Facebook. But when it comes to retirement savings, the size of people's nest eggs is usually a big mystery. So when this monster tosses us a benchmark, it's tempting to use it to see if we're ahead or behind. It's like we're constantly peeking over the fence at our neighbor's yard, judging if our grass is greener than theirs. But here's the catch: these generic benchmarks are a terrible fit for your personal retirement needs. The irony is that these numbers are usually averages, and they rarely even represent the average person. Think about it. If I told you the average shoe size for people your age, would it change what you wear? What about the average shoe size for your gender? Of course not. There's no value in generic benchmarks for actionable advice specific to you. Your retirement plan needs to be personalized. Otherwise, it's like taking whatever pills are in your neighbor's medicine cabinet. And it's not just the standard media that does this. Standard retirement planning feeds this monster too. Advisors throw out rules like save 10% of your income or use the 4% safe withdrawal rate, but they rarely dig into what you need. These generic benchmarks don't just lurk in articles, they fundamentally misrepresent readiness in ways most advisors never discuss. And here's how they create risk. On one hand, this monster can make you underestimate your actual readiness. If you're fixating on some big arbitrary number and you're nowhere near yet, you might think, I've got to work 5 more years to get there, when in reality, you could already be set. For example, I just had a client, I'll refer to him as John, who was convinced he needed $1.5 million to retire. He was at 1.2, and he kept pushing, stressed out of his mind. And it turns out his modest lifestyle actually only needed around $900,000, and he could have stopped 3 years earlier. On the flip side, there's this opposite risk of false confidence. Say you slay the monster by hitting that magic number, you might think, hey, I'm golden. But it doesn't guarantee success if your lifestyle or expenses don't match its assumptions. And here's the kicker: delaying retirement because of this monster has a permanent impact on your lifetime enjoyment. Every year you wait is a year you don't get back, that you could have spent traveling, being with family, or even just relaxing. And research backs this up. There are personal factors like your income, spending habits, and goals that matter way more than any one-size-fits-all target. Which brings us to some fascinating data that I want to share with you next. If you'd like to learn more about how we work with clients to help them retire with confidence, click the first link in the description below to book a free consultation with me. So, recent research from Edward Jones, prepared by retirement strategist Catherine Tierney, reveals a much more nuanced approach to retirement savings benchmarks, one that could completely change how you view your current savings and retirement timeline. Unlike those generic media benchmarks, Catherine Tierney's study gives us specific savings targets based on your current income level, a way more personalized approach. For example, let's step through some numbers. If you're 50 years old and making $50,000 a year, the research suggests that you might need $250,000 to $300,000 saved. But if you're still 50 years old and making $200,000, that target jumps to needing $1.43 million to $1.69 million. At 55, those ranges shift higher, say $350,000 to $400,000 for the $50,000 earner, and up to $1.8 million for that higher income person. And at age 60, it's even more, and at age 65, the targets top out based on retiring that year. So picture this. Let's talk about someone named Sarah, who is 50 years old, earning $50,000, and simply lives in a small town. $300,000 might cover her cozy retirement with a garden and some occasional trips. Then there's Mark, who's also 50 years old, earning $200,000 with a big house, kids in college, and a golf habit. He's looking at needing $1.6 million to keep just that lifestyle going. Same age, totally different needs. That's why Edward Jones ties benchmarks to income, not just years. So, how do they get those numbers? They make a few assumptions, including that you retire at 65, live to your age 92, contribute 15% of your pre tax income each year, factor in 3% of inflation, and get 6% investment returns before retirement and 5% thereafter. These benchmarks aren't single numbers, they're ranges accounting for market volatility. And the lower end assumes some smoother sailing, while the higher end, like that $1.69 million figure, reflects an 80 to 90% chance of success, even if markets get rocky. So, why is this approach different? First, it shows how income level creates dramatically different needs, not just math, but lifestyles. Second, it proves that a one size fits all benchmark fails to capture your individual circumstances. If your savings aren't in these ranges, there might be a good reason, like you're planning to downsize or you're going to work part-time. And third, this study highlights how retirement timing flexibility changes everything. If you want to retire at 55 instead of 65, your target shifts. And the big takeaway from the Edward Jones study is they say it outright. The relevant data point isn't what others your age have saved, but how much money you need yourself. What this research ultimately reveals is a fundamental shift in how we should approach retirement planning. That shift leads us to what I call the cash flow freedom framework. Here's the principle. True retirement security comes from creating sustainable cash flow systems, not hitting arbitrary savings targets. Even income-based targets from Edward Jones, while better than most generic ones, still miss the most crucial factor, which is your cash flow structure. See, it's not about how much you've piled up, it's about how you can reliably use that pile to pay down your bills every year. Think of it like a garden. You don't need just a big pile of seeds, you need a system to water them, grow them, and harvest them year round. And this approach eliminates the anxiety of benchmark comparisons entirely. You're not asking, can I keep up? You're asking, will my money work for me? This principle completely transforms how you should approach retirement planning. Traditional planning is all about accumulation. How much do I need to save? How can I grow it higher? But cash flow planning flips that to how can I create reliable income streams? And that metric shifts from total savings to income reliability and sustainability. And implementing this involves three specific systems that work together for this cash flow freedom framework. First, there's the income stream engine. This is about designing an optimal strategy for multiple income streams like Social Security timing, factoring in a pension, what dividend goals we should have, and perhaps most importantly, how to leverage the variety of accounts across your nest egg to minimize taxes and maximize lifetime value. Imagine it as a buffet. You don't just want to load up on just mashed potatoes. You got to mix in some protein and veggies so you're not just relying on one dish. Second, the volatility shield. This protects against market volatility and sequence of returns risk. Those early years of retirement when a market crash comes in could tank your savings. Think of it as a cash cushion or conservative investments to ride out the storms, like a financial lifeboat. For our clients, we implement this as a strategic allocation towards bonds and fixed income, designed to provide a certain number of years' worth of withdrawal needs without fretting over market dips affecting their lifestyle. And third is the spending flex plan. This is the backup plan in case your spending has to change given market conditions, where you cut back in lean years and enjoy more in good ones. It's like adjusting your AC. You want to dial it down when it's chilly or crank it up when the sun's out. Together, these systems give you a framework for success that static savings targets can't touch. So, how do you put this into action? Well, first, let's start with some mistakes to avoid when deciding your own savings target. First, the implementation mistakes. Don't use generic spending rules like 4% a year instead of factoring in expenses that keep your life humming along today. Don't fail to account for how expenses change either, like spending on travel early in retirement versus more on healthcare later in life. And don't ignore how taxes will impact your income. And don't underestimate healthcare costs, especially with long-term care, which I consider the potential torpedo to a retiree's savings. And then there are psychological mistakes, such as don't let your peer comparisons drive your decisions. Don't hesitate to retire when you're ready just because benchmarks make you nervous. And then there's some technical mistakes I see, such as assuming that a withdrawal rate, such as that stereotypical 4%, works forever. Don't forget that inflation can spike for certain areas higher than others, like healthcare. And don't neglect to reassess your plan as life changes. And don't overlook tax implications from where you pull your money from. It's not created equal. If you avoid these mistakes and follow the cash flow freedom framework, here is what you get. First, financially, increased confidence and when to retire, more accurate savings targets tailored to you, less risk of oversaving and delaying retirement, and better resource allocation for your real needs. Then there's psychological rewards as well, such as way less anxiety about keeping up, greater confidence based on your own assessment, better decisions free from comparison pressure, and liberation from arbitrary targets that don't fit you. And for your lifestyle, there's freedom to retire when you're ready, not when benchmarks say so. This creates better alignment between your savings and your desires and a plan that reflects your personal values. Now that you've seen how retirement savings benchmarks can be misleading and how your unique lifestyle needs, income sources, and retirement timeline are far more important than age based comparisons, I hope you feel empowered to retire on your terms, free from the magic number monster's grip. Now, if you're concerned about your retirement plan and would like to see how we help our clients retire with confidence, click the first link in the description below to book a free consultation with me. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next video.